Thank you for joining us today, Ryan, and all of you, as we journey to find the uncommon truth about leadership. How do we create a good plan and a culture and embrace the change that's required for us to lead?
Yeah, we do a couple of pieces that we think are powerful, and this is a huge learning from me. When I was with the Washington Capitals, I'm drafted number 2 in the world to the Caps. So as both of you know, that means they're not a very good team, right? they're the second worst team in the NHL that year. Here's my point: is in Washington, we were a young startup company with not enough skill to really play against the big boys. So we lost a lot. And here's what I learned because I experienced that. Let me take you inside an NHL dressing room. I found that the common cultural language, if I was to put it all together, came together around this idea of blame. So the idea of blame. So, if we couldn't blame the goalie for the loss, we'd blame the referee for the loss. And what we find is that there's a lot of culture that is formed on the language of blame. And if the problem with blame is that everything we've just talked about goes away from a growth point of view, from a development point of view, from a holding myself accountable point of view, if I can turn and blame someone else. So there is no growth in blame cultures. Then I get traded to the Montreal Canadiens, and by the way, I'm not throwing my guys under the bus in Washington. I mean, I was in year 2, I was captain of that mess. We were trying to turn the culture. I get traded to the Canadiens, who had just came off 6 Stanley Cup wins in 10 seasons when I got there. And the common cultural language in that dressing room was much different. That was a team that won a lot. That was a team that, was in the playoffs all the time. And in 9 seasons with the Montreal Canadiens, we went to, 2 Stanley Cup finals. So the common cultural language in that dressing room was built around, or at least this is what I remember, we weren't perfect, but was built around this idea of no excuses. So the words I remember were just find a way to win. So just find a solution. So just find a way to win. And that changed everything. So now, instead of being able to turn and blame the referee, now I was actually accountable for my actions towards, not only in the concept of the team, but, with the coaching staff and with management. Here's my summary on everything I've learned at the NHL level around culture. And we have processes that we help, organizations put in place. But here it is. Culture turns on language. That's it. If you want to know the future of your business, look at the language of your business. You want to know the future of a person, look at the language that they say to themselves. This idea is that the language is the glue, and it's the outpouring of belief system. It's the outpouring of mindset. It's the outpouring of action. And it's the glue that leaders can really influence. So the great leaders, whether they know it and they do it intentionally, or they don't know it and they're just doing it, always influence the language of the culture. And that's not always positive.
Yeah, this is, you just really hit on the overall mindset triad is the wording that I would use that in your story we're talking about. It comes back to those 3 things, and language and self-talk is one of the 3 critical aspects of our mindset and our state. That language that we use actually shows our beliefs and what's in our heart. And the days that I'm Mr. Grumpy Pants, and it's coming out, whether it be in personal relationships or business, is showing where I'm at in my state. And I get to choose what that is, right? So I am accountable, and it's our choice to whether be a victim, fall below the line and go, well, the blame game that you just said, or if it's going to be, it's up to me, which is a accountable statement to start with self first and really change our focus. Because when we start to change our focus on what we focus on, that tells us what we're going to feel. That feeling's going to grow, then we ultimately become it. And then it goes into our language, and because we've set a belief by our focus. And then obviously, lastly, the physiology of what we do with that language is a really critical element to managing our state. And ultimately, state is culture, whether it be individually, my personal culture inside myself, or in the team, in the dressing room of the Washington Capitals. As a leader, which you've been throughout your hockey career, your business career, and in my experience with you, that's something that I really can say, yeah, I've observed that in you, and I've learned it is accountability. And that you really inspire people by doing what you say. That's true leadership. Back to the very beginning of our whole discussion, right? And that, I think this is really critical. What do you think, Bob?
Love the discussion, gents. Thanks so much. Just to build a bit on what was said before by Ryan, the language that we say to ourselves, the language that the team uses is so important. That just leads me to think that the people that we have around us that are speaking languages are really important too. So the story that Ryan told about the two hockey teams, someone had pulled together the team and they were all speaking the same language to build that culture, right? And that's management, and that's leadership coming together. And what an interesting thing if you would have got a chance to stay with Washington, right? Because they became a very good team, 20 years later. They did, over time, change the culture and change the language of that team by moving out people, bringing in people, right? When you're in an organization, you don't have the opportunity to move people out. You really do have to change mindsets, and you really do have to change their language. And that is a tall order, but it starts with self. It starts with you understanding that and you having the confidence to move forward. And the hint that I would give to other people is you've got to bring like people on board. So I was in an organization of over 100 employees leading that organization, and the culture needed to be changed. And that's immediately what I did, was reach out and bring people, 2 or 3 key people on at the senior management level out of, let's say, 10. And then one by one, we started to change language and change mindset through the process of discussions and encouragement and training and going to conferences together and bringing people on and forming that cohort of like-minded people who could then influence others around them. And that was a 7-year passionate growth period for everybody. Very exciting. Changing the culture, changing the mindsets of a family, a hockey team, a business department, or a whole organization.
We have our little model talks about, future positive vision. Leaders are through their language and through their, obviously you have to do it first. And, this comes back to what we do and what we say. But leaders really give direction to companies and cultures. And that is a fun thing to do, because you see people come alongside and you see people, after a while decide that this is real and that they're going to be part of it. And I love that idea, because leadership's not about us, right? Leadership doesn't have ego. Let me reverse that. Everybody has ego, but leadership has enough of the good side of the ego to say that, it's not about me. It's not about, hey, look at me, I'm amazing. Leadership is about a movement. It's about taking people in a direction. And so I love that thought. And that's where language is so important. I listen in now. You guys will laugh at me. I had a a buddy of mine that kept saying, you know, he's standing in front of his wife and he kept saying, my kids, my kids, my kids. And I finally turned to him and I said, I think she bore the kids. Like it's not my kids, it's our kids. And you know, your viewers might think that that's such a small piece, and it is. And I'm jumping on my buddy. But here's the point: language counts, right? What was she thinking when he was saying "my kids"? So this is a powerful place for leadership to be very self-aware and understanding that their language has impact. And it's a great place to play out leadership because you can see it, you can hear it, you can feel it immediately.